Hey guys, it's me, Zoe. It doesn't really work, but I do have my Mario t-shirt, so let's get straight into today's review, which is the original Super Mario Brothers, but not quite the original version. We're going to have a look at the Game Boy Color version on Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, and the Super Nintendo version on Super Mario All-Stars. Let's do it! Super Mario Bros. Is a game that has rightly earned its place in the Video Game Hall of Fame, so I'm going to have to tread carefully here with my review. Not because I'm nervous of saying the wrong thing around as many fans, but instead because I don't want to simply parrot the views that thousands of other people have already stated time and time again in reviews of their own. My first exposure to the Mario universe was quite different to that of the average YouTube video game reviewer. I didn't grow up with Mario. I didn't grow up with the NES. I didn't even see one in person until I visited a friend's house in the mid-90s and he happened to have a NES set up with Mario playing on it. The reason for all this is simple. In the 80s, Nintendo failed to gain a foothold in the UK games market. The UK in the 80s was a very different place in video game terms, so different in fact that in the UK the term video games wasn't in common parlance. We called them computer games, because most households didn't have a video game console, they had an 8-bit computer. Most likely, it was a ZX Spectrum, or a Commodore 64, or, like I did, they had an Amstrad CPC. Games for these machines sold for £9.99 if they were new and in a big, well, comparatively speaking, cardboard box, the big new releases, or between £1.99 and £2.99 on a budget label. Nintendo games, on the other hand, sold for around $34.99 to $39.99, which is a huge difference that most families back then simply couldn't justify. And it's easy to see why. When your budget is tight, as it likely was if you had young kids back when a single pound bought you far more than it will today, a 20-time difference in price is a big turn-off. Consequently, my first experience of Mario was in the Game Boy launch title Super Mario Land, which I played at a friend's house. I loved that game. It was captivating in the literal sense of the word. There was so much going on in it, and the music was great. It's a classic. It also came a lot later than the original Super Mario Bros., so when I finally played that game years after seeing Super Mario Land, it didn't grab me the way it grabbed so many people in the 80s. Super Mario Bros. Felt a little empty to me, so I played it once at a friend's house, and then we went back to playing Magic the Gathering, which, for some of you, just dated the year that I first encountered this game. Yeah, I was that late to the party. My next encounter with Mario was when I picked up Super Mario World as part of a bundle of 3 games that came with my second-hand Super Nintendo. I picked up my SNES, and these 3 games, Mario World, Mario Kart, and Starwing, Star Fox to you Americans, at a car boot sale in the late 90s, all for £15. Even back then, I knew I got a damn good deal for that stuff. I still have the console and the games, and that's what we'll be playing today's game on, in fact. But how can we play a NES game on the SNES? Simple, we aren't going to. In 1993, Nintendo remastered the original 3 Mario games and the version of Mario 2 that didn't get released here, and they bundled them all together on one SNES cartridge called Super Mario All-Stars. That's the version that we're going to take a look at today, plus the other remaster on the Game Boy Color. So let's get started. First of all, Nintendo have done an amazing job remastering this game. The graphics are gorgeous, the sound is amazing, and everything feels like it was put together with love and care. My old view that this game was pretty empty and not as fun to play as many other titles was totally blown away when I played this version of the game. Everything looks wonderful, and this is essentially just a prettier version of the original game. Or that's what I thought at first anyhow. The truth is, there does seem to be a few differences between this version of the game and the original, and if you notice them, you'll see why it feels like this game plays a little bit different to the old version. First of all, when I played the original, I was able to time a jump so that I could stomp 3 Goombas in a row. That's a pretty basic thing that you can do in Super Mario Bros., and I can still do it on the Game Boy Color version. I can't in All-Stars. Either the jump mechanic is different, or I just can't get the timing right in this version. Maybe it's the controller. When I first started playing, I thought that it was the latter. I thought that I just wasn't getting the timing right. But as I played on, it became very obvious that it's the former, it's the jump mechanic. Why? Because you can also find yourself falling off ledges rather than jumping, and again, it only happens in this version of the game. On the Game Boy Color version, I got very used to running across ledges and leaping at the last minute in order to get across large gaps. But when I try that in the All-Stars version, it sometimes feels like it's a 50-50 chance that I'll fall to my death rather than actually leap. It seems that there's a change to the jumping mechanics, and now it can be quite a problem to leap from the edge of platforms. I've tested this multiple times, and it's clear to me that both speed and distance from the platform edge are now factors in whether you can jump. Now, none of this is a bad thing per se, it's just something that you have to get used to when you're playing this version of the game. The game is a different version of the original, rather than a straight sprite swap with a new sound. And I'm fine with that, it's a new challenge. I just wish I'd known that going in, because it does change the way that you approach the game. But that really is the only downside that I have to Super Mario Bros. On the All-Stars pack. It's a great game, I've thoroughly enjoyed playing it, and I can guarantee that I'll keep coming back to it for another play long after this review is over. The same goes for the Game Boy Color version, which also features its own differences. For a start, this version contains an extra challenge mode where you race against the clock to collect a load of red coins while trying to get through the levels. It's a fun addition. Also, there's a save state in both the Game Boy Color and All-Stars versions, so you don't have to complete the game all in one sitting anymore. Now that's a nice addition, especially if you're not a speedrunner and you don't have all the warp zones memorized. Although if you do, they are in the same place in both games, so have fun with that. Oh, and while you're on with completing the game really quickly, it's worth noting that there is a copy of Super Mario Bros. 2 hidden in the Game Boy Color version. I'll save discussion of that one for when we cover that game in its own review. For now, I'll just say, have fun unlocking it. So here we are. All in all, Super Mario Bros. Is a classic game regardless of which version that you play. When I was younger, I didn't care for it, because I was no longer into the platformers that I'd adored as a kid, and it just wasn't pushing my buttons. Now that I've matured and come back to it as a far more rounded gamer, I can definitely see what all the fuss is about. This is a super game that really is a masterpiece in its own right. I love it, and I'm sure that you do too. So I'm going to end this review here and go and play some more Super Mario Bros. See you later! Well, there you are. As you can see, it is a classic game. I think no one can argue that the Super Mario Bros. Wasn't a classic game. Is it as great as it used to be? I would say yes. The version on the Game Boy Color is very, very good. It's responsive, it's great to play. I love playing it. The version on Super Mario All-Stars changes a few things. And I'm not just talking graphically here or sound. Graphically, it's impressive. Sound-wise, it is wonderful. But I don't think the controls are quite the same as they used to be. As I mentioned in the video, there are points where I feel that if you're too close to an edge, you can't jump. Whereas on the Game Boy Color version, I never had that problem. I'm pretty sure, and when I remember playing the original on the NES, I didn't have that problem either. So they have changed some things for the Super Nintendo version. It makes it a more challenging game. I like it. It's a lot of fun. But if you're expecting a pixel-perfect recreation, then you're going to be a bit disappointed. But if you go into it thinking, this is a new version, it's like a remaster of it, I think you'll like it. Okay, that's all we've got time for today, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this, and if you did, remember to click that like button, share it with your friends so that they'll know a good game when they see it, and do subscribe for future videos, because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching GameHammer Daily, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video.